Allora, buonasera e benvenuti e benvenute a questo appuntamento che apre la serie delle conversazioni legate a What a Wonderful World, mostra di collezione che abbiamo inaugurato ieri e che ci accompagnerà per un lungo anno. Quindi welcome and very happy to have you all with us here tonight. Voglio anche salutare e ringraziare tutto il pubblico che ci sta seguendo online da remoto e nel farvi questo saluto voglio solo dire alcune brevissime cose. Allora, per noi questa, che sarà poi Bartolomeo Pietro Marchi che illustrerà e introdurrà questa conversazione. Naturalmente io ringrazio veramente ognuno di voi per essere qui, ringrazio gli artisti, ringrazio Carsten Holler, ringrazio John Ruffman, Simon Denny e ringrazio naturalmente Daniel Birnbaum e Ilaria Bonacossa per essere con noi qui questa sera e ringrazio anche molto Valentino Catricalà che coordinerà questa chiacchierata. Che cos'è questo progetto? Che cos'è questa mostra? Intanto è una mostra di collezione e questo è molto importante per me sottolinearlo. La collezione è l'anima, il cuore pulsante del museo e sono entrate in collezione tante opere in questi anni, siamo arrivati a una collezione di oltre 600 opere e questo progetto è anche l'esito o comunque la puntata numero 2 di una ricerca che abbiamo aperto sempre per colpa di Bartolomeo Pietro Marchi qualche anno fa con una mostra che si chiamava Low Form. Questa volta, oltre ad ospitare gli artisti, voi, abbiamo deciso di provare a sperimentare, cioè di riflettere sul significato e anche, come dire, sulla sfida rispetto alla funzione di un'istituzione che la tecnologia ci apre e abbiamo deciso di costruire questo ecosistema relazionale digitale di cui poi parleremo, che è un dispositivo per registrare, ringrazio che qui sono con noi anche gli autori di questo sistema, per registrare in maniera non, come dire, estrattiva e anonima la relazione del pubblico con le opere. Quindi insomma noi ci stiamo avviando, mentre stiamo progettando il grande MAXXI, stiamo progettando l'espansione anche fisica di questa istituzione nella direzione della ricerca, del dialogo tra arte, architettura, intelligenza artificiale al servizio delle comunità. Saluto anche Andrew che vedo lì con noi. Mentre facciamo questo proviamo intanto a sperimentare la tecnologia dentro il museo al servizio di una comprensione, vorrei dire di una triangolazione più intensa tra curatori, artisti e pubblico. Ecco, e con questo io vi saluto, vi ringrazio e cedo immediatamente la parola a Bartolomeo Pietro Marchi, che è il direttore del Dipartimento MAXXI Arte e che è anche diciamo, la causa di tutto questo. Grazie.
Ecco, mi associo anch'io ai ringraziamenti, ovviamente in particolare agli artisti e a chi ha voluto partecipare a questo talk che ci fa particolarmente piacere perché sono tematiche su cui stiamo indagando, come diceva la Presidente, da qualche anno in modo assolutamente critico, quindi non in modo acritico, cioè senza accettare tutto quello che passa o che arriva dal mondo dell'innovazione tecnologica, ma cercando di capire attraverso soprattutto lo sguardo, la prospettiva degli artisti più interessanti che ragionano su queste tematiche, come poter affrontare un discorso critico sia sull'utilizzo di questi strumenti per la creazione artistica che oggi con la possibilità di utilizzarli addirittura come strategia museale, cioè come strumento che il museo mette a disposizione di coloro che lavorano nel museo e dei propri pubblici per avvicinare sempre di più il pubblico alla comprensione e all'esperienza dell'arte e dei suoi significati. Quindi questo stiamo facendo, e oggi con questa mostra ne è una prima, presentiamo il primo prototipo disegnato dal centro di ricerca Her, She Loves Data, e chiamo Oriana e saluto Salvatore che è qui con noi, l'altra anima di Her, per raccontare, al di là della mostra, di cui adesso dirò due parole, che cosa in qualche modo ci siamo inventati.
Visto che tu sei più bravo di noi con le tecnologie, io
non fa... beh, iniziamo bene, non lo so.
È il nostro...
Eccolo.
Vedete, è bravissimo. Bravo.
Però funziona, no?
Sì. Benissimo. Allora, è già stato detto tutto in un modo meraviglioso dalle persone che abbiamo l'onore che ci hanno preceduto, quindi sia dalla Presidente sia da te Bartolomeo, e quindi sarò felicemente molto breve perché si è scaricato qui. Ce lo scambiamo. Allora, è già stato detto veramente quasi praticamente tutto. Dire che questo ecosistema che vediamo è una strategia per il museo è il cuore vero del progetto. Dire che lo sperimentiamo oggi come prototipo dentro una mostra significa anche guardare ad oggi e a questa mostra come una cosa meravigliosa, un esperimento, proprio nello spirito di collaborazione fra l'arte e la scienza. Quindi tutto quello che faremo e che faremo come noi, voi, il pubblico, le persone che guardano le opere, gli artisti, diventa proprio questo un dispositivo che ci consente di osservare e anche di sperimentare. Tutto quello che vediamo cambierà. E che cosa stiamo vedendo qua dietro di noi? Stiamo vedendo dei quadratini, ogni quadratino è un'espressione, ci sono due colori in questo ecosistema, in questo mondo, il viola e il bianco. Il viola è il MAXXI che si esprime sulle opere e sugli artisti, il bianco è la novità, il pubblico che con la sua relazione con l'opera si esprime, va a generare, a creare, a co-creare la vita dell'opera. Questo significa che questi dati generati, le espressioni delle persone sopra le opere diventano parte della collezione, come proprio le opere. Tutto ciò che dicono i curatori, tutto ciò che dice il museo è già parte della collezione. Ecco che una nuova possibilità di scrivere una storia connettiva, oltre che collettiva, si apre, dove c'è lo spazio anche per lo sguardo del pubblico, e questa è una cosa bellissima per l'arte contemporanea che ci ha sempre raccontato, lo sguardo come un fatto attivo, come qualcosa che può essere attivo. Dietro tutto questo ci sono degli algoritmi di intelligenza artificiale che ci aiutano a leggere i testi, e le forme che vedete non sono affatto casuali. Dietro questa lettura dei testi ci sono degli algoritmi di flocking, quelli che ci hanno consentito anche di vincere il premio Nobel con Parisi, e quindi ciò che vedete qui sono delle attrazioni e delle repulsioni, proprio come un sistema vivente, come un organismo o come i pianeti, e quindi già guardare questo ecosistema solo con gli occhi ci consente di avere una lettura di questo ecosistema. Io mi fermo qua.
Spieghiamo un attimo come funziona in modo più pratico. Allora, ci sono 15 grandi installazioni che abbiamo presentato, che fanno parte della collezione o entreranno a far parte della collezione perché abbiamo commissionato apposta per questa mostra, che già di per sé realizzano un percorso molto immersivo e molto esperienziale. Durante tutto il percorso della mostra ci sono 4 postazioni di touchscreen, con un touchscreen dove attraverso, in forma assolutamente anonima e non estrattiva dei dati, il pubblico ha la possibilità di scansionare il proprio biglietto, il barcode del proprio biglietto, entrare dentro il software di cui stiamo parlando e rispondere ad alcune domande rispetto a 4 dimensioni: il tempo, lo spazio, l'esperienza e i significati. Questa restituzione è, ripeto, assolutamente anonima, viene registrata in tempo reale e processata in tempo reale dall'algoritmo che lo inserisce all'interno dell'ecosistema, per cui noi iniziamo come pubblico, entriamo a far parte di questa visualizzazione. Questa visualizzazione è qui all'inizio della mostra e alla fine della mostra, di modo che il pubblico abbia la possibilità di entrare, di ritornare, di rivedere, di approfondire, eccetera. Perché innanzitutto questo strumento è uno straordinario strumento per avvicinare il pubblico alla percezione di ciò che vede, a pensare, a capire i significati che il museo e gli artisti veicolano, e quindi è già di per sé, soltanto per questo, uno strumento di straordinario interesse in termini di approfondimento dell'esperienza del visitatore.
Sono questo è molto tutte le cose che ha detto Bartolomeo, e si vede che questo progetto è frutto di una coprogettazione vera. Abbiamo lavorato per 8 mesi insieme con 7 uffici, 40 persone, sia le parole, le dimensioni, dove dovevano essere posizionate le cose, la forma anche. Abbiamo collaborato meravigliosamente anche con il designer che ha creato l'identità visiva, quindi questo approccio ecosistemico collaborativo, questo emergere della vita è stato anche qualcosa che ha ispirato e fatto, diciamo è stata anche la vita vera di questo progetto. È importantissima quella parte di restituzione di questi nostri dati che generiamo, perché in quella piazza, che è una sorta di piazza, si è creato un luogo dove proprio noi lo chiamavamo sempre agorà in questa coprogetta. A un certo punto è emersa questa agorà, e lì c'è questa panchina, proprio come siamo abituati qui in Italia, in Europa, no? Quante cose avvengono nella piazza. Ecco, in questa piazza ci sarà vedrete un altro touch screen dove questo ecosistema si apre all'esplorazione, quindi ognuno può cliccare questi pallini, guardare cosa c'è dentro. Se li tirate, vi tirate dietro anche le forme, quindi potrete proprio anche guardare queste forme. E poi c'è anche un'altra cosa fondamentale: il biglietto serve anche per un secondo tipo di interazione. C'è un altro lettore barcode e questa volta, se viene scannerizzato nel momento dell'agorà, quando sei lì presente, ciò che vedi è la storia della tua interazione. Si evidenziano solo i puntini che tu hai generato durante il tuo percorso, e questo avverrà anche tra 1 anno, 2 anni, 10 anni. Quindi questo biglietto, ora ieri lo dicevamo, è un bambino questo ecosistema, fa ancora molte poche cose, ma già questo provate a metterlo nella vostra immaginazione, cosa potrà essere un biglietto di una mostra quando ci sono queste possibilità. Esatto. E quando i dati entrano nello spazio pubblico, guardare i dati insieme agli altri, far sì che le persone questo ecosistema lo possano vivere insieme, seduti, discuterne, parlarne.
Perfetto. Vai.
I'm a little island on the side with just 2 nodes. What does that mean?
Which one?
I'm over here.
Oh,
I'm like all
you're
alone. I'm the least popular.
Okay.
For the moment, yes.
This is so. First of all, I don't know, but Bertolomeo, you see, as soon as you put data into the public space, things start happen. So we can start. We just call it like a sort of psychoanalytical session that as soon as you are able to reflect about yourself. So this can be 2 things. The ecosystem gives you...
Vai, allora, John Rathman ha chiesto perché nella visualizzazione attuale lui ha così pochi pallini che gli fanno riferimento.
So,
parla in italiano.
Yeah, parlo italiano perché voi avete la traduzione.
Sì.
Ok, sorry. Ci sono due possibilità. E ti dico la prima, che è la più probabile. L'ecosistema restituisce le ultime interazioni. Ok? Da ieri, ecco, una cosa che non vi abbiamo detto, l'abbiamo guardato ieri, ci sono state circa 2500 espressioni solo nell'opening, quindi pallini bianchi, per motivi semplicemente di spazio digitale non si possono vedere tutte le interazioni insieme, se ne vedono dei pezzi e le ultime, quindi probabilmente in questo momento in questo momento non ci sono dei pallini bianchi, quindi non c'è un'espressione del pubblico sulla tua opera, però è del tutto probabile che non sia così, perché mostra quelli degli ultimi, le ultime interazioni, mentre quando lo studiamo, quindi la conoscenza che resta dentro il museo è quella di tutta la storia di queste interazioni.
Yeah.
Possiamo anche...
No, don't worry, I mean it's just because we are just opened. Allora, velocemente perché abbiamo un tempo limitato. Stavo dicendo, va bene, su questo direi che appunto questo è l'inizio di questa sperimentazione. Chiaramente ha un grado di sperimentazione per cui ha tutto un tema anche di miglioramento nel corso del tempo, di aggiustamento del tiro, però ecco l'idea era quella di iniziare ad avere uno strumento che ci mette a disposizione oggi l'intelligenza artificiale e questi algoritmi di visualizzazione dei dati che ci permettono di fare tutta una serie di riflessioni sul lavoro che facciamo e sulla percezione del pubblico rispetto alle opere d'arte. L'altra, grazie Oriana, velocissimamente, grazie Oriana. Velocissimamente, innanzitutto volevo ringraziare Meta con cui stiamo collaborando per la realizzazione di questi talk e con cui appunto continueremo a fare tutta una serie di appuntamenti di approfondimento sulle tematiche, e da pochi mesi abbiamo anche inaugurato quello che di cui si parla molto e che c'era anche nel titolo di questa conversazione, il famoso spazio del metaverso, uno spazio che se riesci a mandarmi il video vi faccio vedere velocemente. È uno spazio che abbiamo iniziato a realizzare per il museo del MAXXI L'Aquila, che abbiamo inaugurato un anno fa e che da oggi si è esteso anche al MAXXI di Roma, e a questo punto non c'è più differenziazione fra l'Aquila e Roma, ma è tutto un unico spazio che avvicina tra l'altro anche fisicamente i due musei. In questo spazio abbiamo commissionato delle opere a degli artisti. La prima opera è quella di Valentina Vetturi, che ha realizzato proprio un progetto per il metaverso del MAXXI, e la seconda è di Miltos Manetas, e è in corso di produzione quella di John Rathman, che questo tipo di opere possono essere esperite esclusivamente all'interno di questo spazio, quindi non è una trasposizione di qualcosa che è nel mondo fisico semplicemente in una vetrina virtuale, ma è qualcosa che ha a che fare proprio con lo spazio del metaverso, ed è uno degli argomenti di cui parleremo oggi nel talk. Mi fermo qui perché siamo già andati lunghissimi e lascio la parola a Valentino per condurre il talk. Grazie.
Grazie dell'invito. Molto bello essere qui, e anche in questo contesto, in questo panel con queste personalità, e questa mostra anche molto bella, ed è una tematica molto importante, come possiamo, perché in quanto tematica molto molto attuale. Io adesso farò uno switching in inglese, so I'm gonna speak in English, but you have to speak in Italian. Did you know that? No. Okay, that's fine. And I'm very happy to be here among these incredible speakers. And so they're all working around these topics. So I'm very, very high level. And I think that the metaverse, artificial intelligence, and the museum. So also the impact of digital technology in our society, in the contemporary artwork, and in our institution as well. So I hand over. The first speaker is Daniel Birbam. All of these speakers don't need any introduction, but I'm going to introduce them a little bit. Birbam is currently the artistic director of Acute Art. You're going to explain us what Acute Art is, but I mean, it's very popular and famous already. But he's the former director of Moderna Museet in Stockholm, and he directed, Venice Biennale and Moscow Biennale as well. You worked as well at Moscow Biennale, in 2005, I guess, if I'm not if I'm on graph. Okay, so Daniel, it's up to you. How do you see, with your experience, what is happening today, because you have anticipated with Acute somehow, all these new waves of metaverse, immersive and virtual reality, etc., etc.
Thank you. Yes, in a way, at least I have to say that my timing was impeccable, because in 19 I was, involved with some exhibitions that had to do with art and technology. And Stockholm is not Silicon Valley, but there's Spotify and there's Skype, and there are lots of quite powerful companies there. And I always try to bring them in, just like I'm sure you try here, and to find the collaborations and sponsorships and all of that. But I remember there was a conference where I was in a way introduced to new mediums. It has the humble name Brilliant Minds. It happens every year. It's Spotify, powered by Spotify. But anyhow, we had Jeff Koons and Marina Abramovic and Olafur Eliasson on stage talking about VR, virtual reality, and they had already tried that with this studio that I'm now working with, Acute Art. It's a kind of laboratory, if you want, or an atelier for new media. I'm very happy to have, to be here with some of the real pioneers. I think John Ruffman was the first first virtual reality piece I ever saw. Simon did a big museum show that had the kind of, that doubled itself and was also in AR. And Carsten we have worked with, and he has done augmented reality. I guess in every century, once or twice or maximum 3 times, something is introduced that actually changes everything. And with everything, I mean what an art piece can be, or how an art piece reaches an audience, and what an institution is meant to do. And, think of photography or cinema or, television, the video camera, the internet. Those are paradigm shifts that actually change a lot. And not only how to distribute art, it's actually, in the end, has repercussions for the very ontology of art. What is an art piece? With photography, it changed. And we're right now, I think, in the middle of an interesting period when we're trying to figure out things. And sometimes that window of a few years when no one understands anything are the most interesting periods for, at least from an artistic point of view. And I think we're sitting at the very center of that window right now. And what are these new possibilities? I guess it's a cluster of different possibilities that are a little bit, from a technological point of view, very closely linked. Mixed reality, augmented reality, VR. It's not so clear how this will be how it will enter the art market, how it will enter the traditional museum, the structures that we all grew up with and that I've been working with in most of my life. This is a fantastic museum, but I'm not 100% sure that all of the things that we're going to talk about are, for the museum. And I'll show it just a few minutes of something we did. We started doing shows working with AR, and for some of you, maybe it's not so clear that VR is something you see in headsets and it's totally immersive, and you're in a different place and you're totally immersed. Augmented reality is something you can see through transparent headsets or simply on a telephone, and it's then embedded in the normal world. I mean, it's both physical and there are there are other challenges there. It's never going to be quite as sensational and spectacular as VR, which is the most spectacular of mediums. It's more overwhelming than cinema even. But AR is different because you can place it and you can be more and more exact, and you can now locate things like a physical bottle and an augmented reality bottle, and seen through a headset or something, you will not be able to say which one is which, and you can curate things. And we tried to do this when all the museums were closed, and that's what I meant with good timing. That when the institutions were actually closed over the world, we did a low budget, or actually no budget, exhibition in central London, and we only had a media partner, which is a magazine called Dazed, and they did a few small films and clips and advertised it, and thousands of people went out along the river and looked at these objects. And it was, I think, 10 artists, some very, very well known, and not necessarily the artists that you would expect working with high-tech stuff. I mean, it was Chow Fei, obviously everyone does expect that, and we did a VR piece and an AR piece, which is right here in the museum. So I'm happy about that. Hello, Hu Hanru, thank you. But we worked with the people like Thomas Saraceno, Alicia Quade, Nina Chanel, Darren Bader, Olaf Eliasson, and I mean, all of them are open-minded experimental artists, but they're not necessarily known only as digital practitioners. So I'll show you just a few minutes, like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. The interesting thing is that other people speak. So we have a few art voices here.
I think augmented reality is somehow showing us what we are creating with our outer world anyways. Why we create reality and what that is.
There are constantly new lenses to see through, to see the world differently. Now the wonders are outside. Why not look at art? And why not try to scale the art so it fits with the city? It's a special thing. And there's these boys, and every time you see one of them, there is a work of art there through the acute art.
My name is Kujong Ah. The work is called Density.
I'm interested in the idea of a narrative that moves along with its time. The octopus and the light bulb man, they were basically sculptures in bronze. I was surprised myself how these old characters translated so well into a complete new medium, taking them into a virtual world, immaterialized them in a way.
I've always made work that deals with technology.
Yeah, there are 10 artists or 11 who say a few words about why they're interested in these things, and this was a show that could happen outside of institutions and outside of all the art fairs and galleries were closed anyhow. And since then we've tried this, and it's getting more precise and a little bit better, I think. So we've done it in New York and on the High Line, and in Buenos Aires, and in Montreal, and in Singapore with the National Gallery in the city. And I think the most ambitious version will happen in late August, coinciding with Freeze in Seoul, Korea. And it's a kind of new art form, or let's say a new exhibition format at least. And I'm not sure this is Metaverse. This is actually the public sphere. This is more like an electronic version of the Münster Skulpturprojekt. You can do things out there, and you can walk around, and I think this will become more and more common. And I know many artists are already doing it, and we're working with many other artists than the ones right here. And I think it will change, the idea of where art is presented and how it can reach audiences. And a few months ago, my friend, and who many of you know here, and who many here actually have worked with, Hans-Ulrich Obrist, wanted us to help him with a project that would be really in the metaverse, I guess. And it's a collaboration with the biggest game in the world called Fortnite. And one of the artists here has a very different background from most of you, because he comes from street art and graffiti and is becoming an immensely successful, commercially successful, in many other ways successful practitioner called Cause. And he's, you know, comes from street art. He's doing collaborations with, I mean, originally it was illegal what he was doing, but now he's kind of working with the same people that he was kind of intervening, you know, that he was kind of attacking maybe almost with his stuff. And he was involved with Fortnite, and then Hans-Ulrich wondered if we could take the whole institution, and his institution is the Serpentine Gallery, and place it inside Fortnite. And we did that, and they put it in the so-called hub, where people who play the game, you know, you enter the game through the hub. So around 100 million people entered that institution in the first 10 days. And of course, this is kind of, I mean, mind-blowing. Of course, most of them are very young, which is interesting, you know, kids. They're there for other reasons. They've often never been in an art institution. They don't know what a gallery looks like. They're probably there to play the game and to shoot each other, although it was a non-violent zone. But it, for us, of course, showed that there are unbelievable potentials here. That, you know, when it comes to reaching audiences, placing, you know, introducing art in other kinds of contexts, I guess it may sound a little bit naive or something, but there is a democratizing potential in these mediums, where you reach far outside of where, you know, not everyone lives in Rome or in London or in Paris, where there are fantastic institutions. Yeah. And you know, these mediums will reach people far outside the normal structures.
So, sorry, Daniel, I have to interrupt you.
I'm done.
But it's very interesting, especially because they are also very, very easily shippable, no? All these works, you know, and then very well...
I mean, no crating, no insurance.
Exactly.
It's not without a carbon footprint, because, you know, the internet is not entirely harmless.
Exactly.
But that's a special theme.
But, you know, here we have an artist which work are not, I mean, not only, you know, more difficult to ship because they are, you know, concrete and somehow very big, but somehow there is a kind of, you know, a sort of immersion, you know, also in that kind of artworks, and which is Karsten Holler, and I don't know if I will pronounce your surname, Holler, no? Okay, more or less, that, you know, you create kind of interactive installation and sculpture that, you know, rise particularly state of mind, you know, like excitement, alteration, you know, confusion, doubt, etc. You know, you've done, you know, very important exhibition all over the world, and it would be interesting, you know, to hear, you know, from you what your point of view on all of these, you know, kind of world we are about, or we are living, or about to, or, you know, we have already lived, you know.
Maybe one should use the word extension, like there's an extension possible, I think. Let's put it like that. I have been working for a long time to try to come over the idea of a physical art object, or an art object as such that can be identified as a limited entity, and to have this as, you know, a point of reference that you then contemplate upon. This is something that art has been doing through the ages. And I have a little difficulty with the idea of, you know, using a new way of looking at the world, in the sense maybe AR, and placing things in there. So when I spoke also with Daniel about this idea of that you see things that you don't see. And this is, you know, like when you have this possibility to use this tool, for instance, to see through the phone, or if you go into VR and see, you know, another world even. What I would find more interesting is a way to transform the way how we perceive the world that we live in. And transform mean extend, in the sense that you can use these technologies to try to go, you know, to places where you haven't been before, to say it very simple. So the thing that we did together, just as an example, was like, you know, you have been telling me, like, don't you want to put something in there that you can't see? And I said, like, no, I don't want to put something in there that you can see, but I want to use this as a way to see probably less than you would usually see. For instance, one thing is the consistency of seeing, the consistency of hearing, the consistency of perceiving as such, something that we find then very predictable. You know, we know that the lights here, for instance, they're just there, like they're illuminating the space. But what would happen if the light, and that includes the natural daylight, is not something as reliable anymore that as we tend to perceive it. So if it suddenly starts to behave in its own way. So the thing that we worked together upon was actually, it's a way to make your phone freak out, as I call it. I also call it reduced reality in a way, because it takes away a part of the reality. It takes away the consistency of things, how they appear to us. So what happens with your phone when you switch on this app is like that you start to see a flickering, so it's not a consistent way of looking at your surroundings. You see the camera filming what you see around you, but it's flickering. At the same time, there is a sound appearing that produces a back and forth. Then there's also a vibration in the phone. And the whole thing is like, I wanted people to, you know, when they use this app, that basically they think their phone is freaking out and they drop it because it's becoming like a dangerous object. So in this way. But then when it comes to like using other devices that you can use in order to perceive the world around you, I'm very interested in the idea of extension, of something that goes further and puts into question what you normally take as granted.
And I mean, really suggested to see the Karsten's work into this exhibition, which is, if I'm not wrong, 1994 or
something
six
like
or
that.
something like that, which is
96,
somehow an immersion experience as well, you know, because
it's like a non-electrical VR piece. It's like the cheapest of the VR pieces that you can think of, because it's just like, I don't know if you've seen the exhibition, but you can put your head inside an aquarium with fishes and they swim around you, and it's a change of perspective, like exactly like what we're talking about here, in the sense that the fishes normally, when, who said that yesterday? When you're looking, oh yeah, I know who it was, but he's not here now. You're looking onto the water, you know that the fishes are somewhere down there. And now you have a situation where you're under the fishes and they're somewhere up there. So it's, you know, these kind of things that I'm talking about, very simple changes really, but they can profoundly disturb and maybe even change in a way your way how you feel to be alive and to be in this world.
yeah, I mean, you've been too precise, actually, you know, I mean, with timing, you know, because it's exactly 8 minutes, you know. I don't know if to do another question or just switch. So maybe we switch and then back, okay? So, Ilaria Bonacossa is just, you know, has been just appointed, you know, director of the new museum, Digital Art Museum in Milan. But before she was the artistic director of Artissima, which is one of the main Italian fair. And you started to deal with digital technology in Artissima already, you know, so it's, and then you experience being the artistic director of a fair during the lockdown and the pandemic, and now this new output, which is quite interesting, this kind of, you know, path, you know, somehow, you know, how do you see this?
Well, the museum, the museum is the future museum. There's no museum yet. And the questions of what a museum of digital art are very big. Or should there be a museum like as a physical place, or is it completely a nonsensical issue? That said, the ministry is working on restructuring a 1925 public bath, which is very Italian to have the digital museum in a place which is, you know, more than 100 years old. So there will be a place, but exactly how the digital art will work with the place is a big question, and it's good. It'll take at least 3-4 years to restructure it. So maybe by then I will have some answers. And the easy answer is any art that you buy as a file, because obviously being a national museum, it will have a collection. So the main goal is to have a collection. And where do you draw the line? Well, probably if you buy the art on a file, it is digital art without any question. That said, yes, I think museums are going through a huge transformation. And I think if anyone has kids, this is even more apparent than in what you see in museums, because for young people, something which is not put on social media does not exist. This issue of human beings losing memory is a big issue, of which I think we're just starting to see the beginning, and it's really something that we are at the beginning of this completely social transformation, and maybe we are even at the beginning of something that will backlash very much, and who knows, maybe we'll all be off social media in a short time. It's hard to predict, and sometimes I hope young people are on social media so early that maybe by the time they're 28 to rebel against society, or they're 18, they'll just turn everything off and can't be bothered. But museums have to think of how they meet the world, and what Daniel was telling about going on a gaming world, which is the real big world of the metaverse at the moment. I mean, it's getting big on brands of fashion and communication, but still the art world is very small if you go on real numbers. And the issue is, you go on the metaverse and the normal people who go to the art world are not really in the metaverse. The people who go on the metaverse don't care about the art world. The question is, do you find a point of connection which keeps some value to the art? And I've been reading this book. I'll be doing a bit of advertising. It's called Psychopolitics, and I don't know absolutely how to pronounce the name of this German philosopher who's clearly not German in origin, Byung-Chul Han, where he theorizes, freedom was a short-lived illusion from maybe after the Second World War to now. Freedom is gone. We all live in a very effective, self-willed panopticon of control, and we produce, and it's so clear what he says that you kind of go, well, I kind of knew it. And that said, I was reading the book and thinking that maybe art is the one space where this mechanism of the algorithm knowing what we're going to think, what we're going to like, can be broken. Art can still have a capacity to allow humans to be unpredictable and not choose what big data is telling you you will feel and like. And so in a way, if art can keep this space in this whatever digital transformation we will be, because like Daniel was saying, it's so early and it's so fast that it's hard to know in 2 years. I mean, who would have thought people would pay shoes to buy for their avatar? I mean, it didn't sound like something real. But art can have a space, I think, of critical thinking against, or as a parallel mechanism to this objectivity of data and technology, which, I mean, we obviously know technology is not neutral. It's made with a goal, with someone behind it. And so how do you find that space of creativity and resistance where humans can not be reduced to objects, and the sky is the sky and it's not the cloud, and the world is not Google Earth?
Yeah, and how did you? No, just a little question. If you can tell us, how did you introduce digital technology or digital art? I mean, I've never liked this word, I must say, digital art, but I'm gonna use it just to be into the fair, because I mean, I think that it's too early to talk about the future of the museum, but maybe it could be interesting to see how a fair can.
Well, leading a fair during COVID is not a very fun activity. That said, it was when we still thought we could do the fair the first year of COVID. it was clear we couldn't have international artists and people traveling. And so Artissima is a special fair. It's always been known as a curatorial fair. And we've always had these curated sections which have been scouting young, talented international artists. So I thought, okay, very early, if we have to pick these sections in Italy, it's going to be very castrating. So why don't we turn these sections into a platform? So we created this XYZ platform. And after 6-7 months of Zoom and, you know, like all of us, you kind of realize that the added value is some form of storytelling. And so we made this platform with a big investment, and we were lucky that Torino has these great bank foundations that support culture, where we produced small videos with the artist talking about his work, the galleries talking about why they chose the artist, but we could upload historical videos of the artist, books, people could pick their, but at the end the platform was very small. It was 3 sections of 10 artists. So at the end, if you had to see everything, it would ask maybe 4 hours, 5. And because I kind of felt this idea of time consuming, but I'm an old person, so I still think the number of hours I can spend in front of a computer is limited. You talk to young people who say, you know, the family goes to sleep, they go online and live hours and hours in this alternative space.
Yeah, even if you know it's getting low now, the use of digital technology after the pandemic, of course, because now we are outside, you know. But yes, that's very interesting. And so I will now handle over to Simon. And Simon then is an artist. He has a very beautiful work here as well. And he works, you know, on the political and social implication of technology into society. And you have done very important exhibitions all around the world, of course. And you have been working on another, since quite long time, I must say, you know, another keywords, which is not into this title, but is connected somehow, which is NFT. And I always found that, I mean, I think that NFT is an interesting phenomenon, but the narrative around the NFT is very boring. It's only a matter of trading and technology certificate, you know.
Nope.
But I think that you artists are creating a new narrative around NFT, much more interesting. So you can tell us how, and do you have something to show?
Yeah, it's already up. So
that's perfect.
Thank you very much for the question. My name is Simon Denny, and I have some work in the show, and this here is an image of the installation that's at the far end of the exhibition, which is a kind of museum translation of a recent NFT artwork project, which I did with a couple of other people. And I've been making art about crypto for a long time. This is the first piece I made about Ethereum in 2016, which is the most, I think, used cryptocurrency for art. It's the biggest cryptocurrency used for making NFTs and selling them. It's also the biggest by market capital after Bitcoin. So it's a very significant thing. And this was a part of a project that I did looking at the potential futures of what that medium might look like. I made postage stamps and various other things. I'm now going to skip through a bunch of slides that I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to spend too much time, and I'm just going to speak about this piece that I made in the show. So
we are in time, so if you want, you can.
Yeah. But this is an exhibition that I made in 2018 with a number of artists who use crypto as a medium. So there's many artists that use cryptocurrencies as a medium, and this was an exhibition that translated that in Berlin in 2018. I guess maybe the one thing to say about this piece, this was a centerpiece of the show, which is a money-burning crypto issuing machine. So people literally burned their euros, and there's one flaming up right now. And then you were issued some cryptocurrency after that, which was pretty crazy, and that's what the inside of that machine looked like. So many interesting artworks and artists in that show that went on to do important things. Another cool piece, I think, to speak about of a show that I curated recently as well, of another artist's work, is Sarah Friend, who makes work with cryptocurrencies, but she does it with code. So this is a piece called Life Forms, where you can send somebody an NFT, but the NFT will die after 1 month, or no, 3 months, I think, unless you give it to somebody else. So this is something you can do with the code to make it a very interesting and poetic gesture, just sending something to somebody. So that's a great use of cryptocurrencies. This is a tree which owns itself because of cryptocurrencies, and a group called TerraZero made this tree where it's a legal entity in and of itself that you donate cryptocurrency to, and then the tree pays people to take care of it. And that's a kind of proposition for plants that own itself using cryptocurrencies. But NFTs are, I think, the most visible kind of metaverse, I guess, of cryptocurrencies in some ways. And I would argue that we already live in a metaverse in some ways. People trade JPEGs all the time. And the first project was also featured in that show that was about trading JPEGs was CryptoKitties. That was the first to use the Ethereum I guess, token standard of a single unique JPEG. And what you could do with your CryptoKitties, which was done by this artist, Gile Twardowski, and a group called Dapper Labs, is you could buy a CryptoKitty and you could buy another CryptoKitty, and then you could make them produce a baby CryptoKitty. So they had this game-like phenomenon of reproducing. And it sounds a little cheesy to some art people, I think, but I found it really profound, and I thought it was a really interesting project. And so I approached Gile to produce the work with me about the, I guess, time on the metaverse in some ways, the history of the internet. So this is a screen of death from a company that died in 2001. And as we know, cryptocurrencies and also kind of the digital economy kind of goes in booms and busts. And in 2001, many companies died. And I kind of collect these screens of death from companies. I think they're very interesting. And actually this project called Fucked Company it was alive in that period. It was a website that documented all of these deaths. And I went through there and I chose some to revive. I wanted to bring these companies back to life. And I proposed to Gile that we work together to do a .com seance to bring Web 1 companies back in Web 3 in NFTs. And so this is one of the companies called cashwars.com, which was a free online role-playing game which awarded winners money. And we wanted to bring that back to life. And basically what we did to do that was to make new logos for it that were kind of made by the internet themselves, and then a little bit by Gile. So what you see is, here's one of them, funbug.com, a game platform that allowed users to earn and spend proprietary private currency, sounds like cryptocurrency to me, but happened in the 90s, that could be converted to fiat if in the end. And you see three logos here, one which was the 1999 to 2001 logo of the original company, one which was done by an AI, that was fed a description of the company. So AIs are trained on images from the internet, basically. And so it's kind of like the internet reimagining itself. And then the third one is Gile's version of that. So CryptoKitties artist's version of that. And we sold these NFTs, these JPEGs. And when people bought them, it was like they were part of the new company. So if you bought them that Gile did, you were the CEO. And if you bought some of the machine learning ones, you were a middle manager. And then we brought these companies essentially back to life. And one of them actually was bought by the people that do the tree sculpture that I brought back before, TerraZero. So in some ways, an artist bought the CEO token of an old company and they brought it back to life, and now they are doing something within that company. So it's kind of companies within companies, histories within histories, and the kind of internet revisits itself. Yeah, and that's, again, the final translation that I've made in this show of one of the companies, netmorph.com, where instead of JPEGs, they're printed canvases that can just sit on the wall in a museum. So that's an interesting space to bridge between museums and the metaverse, I would say.
Wow, it's very... No? Wow. So Yeah, can you tell us? Do you want to say something more about the work?
Sure.
Here, the part of this exhibition.
That is the work that's part of this exhibition.
I mean, if you want to tell us a little bit more, how do you think because sometimes, also the formalization of the work into a space, when you work online, it's not as easy, but,
Yeah, so I mean, I thought a lot about how to present artworks that are digital also in museums, because I've actually done that for a long time. My practice has always been about making sculptures about the internet, and John and I both came to prominence in a period that got referred to as post-internet art, which was about taking work that was both digital and putting it inside a museum. So in a way, that's a problem I've been thinking about for a really long time, and I think John has too, about how do you make something which has a life online, a digital life, a metaverse life, let's say, let's say with John's work, something like if people encounter it on 4chan or on some other Second Life medium, but how do you make that a meaningful experience for viewers that go to museums? And I think it's a great problem, and I think there's lots of very successful works that have done that, both from our kind of little generation and other people as well. And for this one, I just thought JPEGs and canvases, printed canvases, cheap printed canvases are very nice. They have a material kind of dialogue because they're very common. You can just order one up at the pharmacy or whatever, and they come very quickly. And I thought to kind of have a dialogue between those two forms was a really interesting thing. And I also looked at other artists from kind of the museum world and the museum history and thought about the way that they present work. And that's not really important for the viewer, but for my own research, I was looking a lot at the work that Andy Warhol did in the 1970s when he did portraits of people that paid for them. And he did them all on a particular canvas size. They were all 40 by 40 inches. And when he did an exhibition of those in 1978 at the Whitney Museum, or 79, he did pairs of them. And you only got your piece in the show if you'd bought two, which I thought was a very interesting commercial reflection of the economy around producing art, which has also a nice relationship to crypto art, which is very commercial. And necessarily commercial because it's in currency. And so I reflected a little bit and mirrored some of the display in that. So that's how I got to that particular display.
Yeah, very interesting. So, okay, I'm a bit worried because we are too much in time, you know what I mean? So, I mean, so please just exceed a little bit, not too much, just a little bit, And so John Ruffman, John Ruffman, I mean, is a Canadian artist, and you are also a filmmaker, an essayist. Is that right? No? Yeah?
Sure.
And you've been working with digital technology for long. I remember, your former exhibition. Yeah. Yes. And you are working now with one of the key works, again, of this conference, which is Metaverse. Mm-hmm. But, just if you can explain us your practice, and will be great. Yes.
I'm actually. Could I stand next to
okay.
the
Did you manage to?
Yeah.
Okay,
mind
great.
if I just stand next to it because it'll be easier. I don't have the slide projector thing. Is that okay? Right over here. So this is the video was basically a documentation of my travels in the metaverse of Second Life, which is, I think, the oldest. Started in 2003, and I actually just met the guy who created it, Philip Linden dollars. That's the currency there. And at the time, I was a net artist, not a post-internet artist back then. And the culture around net art, we hadn't yet figured out how to bring, the internet into the gallery. That was just post-internet. But I think what I found exciting about that community was that it felt like we were the first to recognize, because this was at the beginning of Web 2.0, which was 2006. Meta helped usher that in. Before Facebook, it was known as Facebook. There was just a sense of excitement because there was this Cambrian explosion of content creators, right? And you were talking about the democratic potential. That's when I felt like it was very, very much felt. There was this utopian idea that everybody now could be an artist. And Francis Ford Coppola had this idea that famous quote where he said, one day a fat girl in Ohio was going to be the next Mozart, for film he was talking about. And that actually happened, And in that moment, and still to this day, I think the work that most excites me, no offense guys, is things that some fat girl in Ohio is making and posting on YouTube, way more than anything I walk and see in the galleries. By extension, there's a whole culture called fan fiction, so people writing stories that are based on the world of Star Wars. That's actually more interesting than the actual texts of the shitty Star Wars movies that are being made today, you know? So in a way, this quote unquote outsider art, which is not even outsider art because it's more popular than like what we're doing in these institutions, just finally had a space, a platform because of Web 2.0. And as an artist, as a net artist, basically our practices were kind of like, we called them surfing, you know, surfing the internet. And everybody had their own style of surfing, just like a skateboarder or a surfer would have, you know, that was their voice, how they surfed the internet. So during this time, my practice was really based around literally surfing metaverses. My most famous one being Google Street View, which is more of a documentary metaverse because it's like one-to-one relationship with the real world. While this was the sister project, Kool-Aid Man and Second Life, where I was the Kool-Aid Man avatar, which is this brand. And we had actually had to often visit Chow Fei's. She, at the time, she had this amazing, I think it's still there, right? RMB City. And I was a tour guide of Second Life, and I would take people on these epic tours. And the reason I love Second Life is because it was the 3D metaverse manifestation of the other metaverse, which is reality. And the two would bleed. I think now the dichotomy between the two has collapsed. Because let's say, especially it was acute during COVID, but if most of our emotional, you know, even, you know, psychological, social lives are in a metaverse, then why is that more virtual than our physical worlds? Actually, that actually starts having primacy, right? And or the two just collapse. There's no distinction. But Second Life was just this world of this complete chaos. And I saw myself as a cyber flanner, as a sort of as a dandy walking the streets and observing what was going on in this particular metaverse. And I felt like at the time there was this excitement, right? And over the years, just, you know, I've been in the game now over a decade. I've watched this transformation from this democratic sort of utopian idea to, you know, what I call is the Haussmannization of the internet. So imagine this was like Paris in the early 19th century. And then the giant tech companies, again, sorry, Meta, come in and they bulldoze the boulevards, and they destroy all the old medieval cities to create this kind of very modern city that everybody can funnel through. But you can also suppress any form of revolution. You know, that's arguably one of the reasons, because the communards were like a revolutionary force. And the second you build these giant modern Haussmann boulevards, you can easily mobilize the army. But back then there was less moderation. Not everything was streamed through, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, what have you. And so there was this chaos that I felt like Second Life, for example, represented that anarchic psyche of the internet. But now with like, there is a kind of sense of, so in a way it follows a classic, you know, from the French Revolution to any subculture, you go through your utopian phase, and then you go into what happens later, which is, you know, what we saw maybe at its peak in the Trump era, which is like total polarization. And the algorithm being able to literally basically just create these echo chambers where what you already think reality is then just reflected onto you because of the algorithms fed to you by these different tech monopolies. And then what it created was just all these people who literally have a completely different perception of reality. You know, like what their moral compass is, what is truth. I mean, reality itself, the idea of there being a consensus reality, I will witness completely collapse since the beginning of when I was excited about the internet in this era. And I feel like, in a way, my interest in virtual reality is that it is, and this is what I generally say about my practice, is I think that actually, rather than technology driving change, which it does, it is, I'm not saying it doesn't, it's more of a dialectical thing. I think actually technologies that become successful reveal transformations in consciousness that have already occurred. So in a way, virtual reality reveals this world where we all are living in different bubbles. And I'm kid you not, I've never seen people not literally not be able to perceive each other's realities as much as now. So maybe, VR is the medium of the present because it reflects this total disintegration of a coherent world that we can all agree on. You can see that every day in the newspapers, and depending on which newspaper or media you're filtered, through your algorithm. We all live in little algorithms. Is that okay? Is that 8 minutes yet? I don't know. But I could talk about this. But,
you want to say something about the exhibition that you're working?
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. That's another good thing.
It's fake. It's fake. It's okay.
Because in Meta's Meta, you wouldn't be able to have this probably. That's why I like this Meta, because you can have this. That's the internet's dark underbelly is what was interesting. It's kind of been more and more suppressed. This is very different. Since this period, I've started to create my own realities, and now the algorithms have gotten so powerful, from deep fakes to the algorithm. Simon and I are actually using the same. It's called the clip-guided diffusion algorithm, which literally allows me to write anything into this, basically whatever the mediator is to the algorithm, and it will create whatever I write to the detail. So if I write, if I could show you guys an example of how it is. Sorry, this is very distracting. There's an orgy going on behind me. So yeah, it's another example of how reality itself is collapsing, where if we construct who we are through, for example, our memories or our experience of the world, that's how we create a coherent self, is through some self-narrative we create. But if the algorithms get so good that they can literally create a reality that is so perfectly representative, there's no way to differentiate, then what happens to the self? If there's no coherent self left, if all of reality is fragmented and everybody's, it's not even clear. And that's kind of the theme of the work, where it's kind of a fake forum I created, where people are posting, and some of it is from a real forum, some is something I've written completely, and people just questioning whether their memories of reality are real. It's kind of based on this idea of the Mandela effect, which is a phenomenon that occurred that millions of people thought Nelson Mandela died in this 1 year in prison, but he didn't. But yet all these people together have this memory of that being a fact, So kind of I'm using that as creating a world to describe this condition that I've been talking about. That's the long round. Does that make sense?
Okay, super. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are in time, so before open into questions, I would like actually to ask something to Karsten. If you can tell us, because I was doing some research and then I found out that you have done recently a project, a brutalist restaurant. I found it very interesting. Can you, because it's also, I see that it's also something interactive with food as well, so which is pretty interesting. If you want to say something about it.
Maybe it's interesting in relation to what John and Simon just said, because it's also, as much as there's a kind of desire to extend the world, I use this word again, that we perceive, there's also a desire to feel something real. So it's like, you know, it's, of course, it's like these are very vague terms, and probably they need much better definition. But maybe you know what I mean. So it is interesting to think in you know, like, what will this create? This will definitely give something, but it also takes something away. There's a loss that is created, and this loss needs to be filled with something. So the idea I thought about this actually for quite a while, and it sounds very, very simple, but it makes sense that there's an honesty about eating food which you cannot really have with art. Say it very, you know, flat like this right now, but there's, you know, you can still get a story that this chicken has been raised by, you know, somebody in a special circumstance, and that's why it's tasting so good. But actually, at the end of the day, it's you eating something, and it's a very real experience. It's like, it's one of these things that make, you know, your day really. So I thought food is interesting because in art, things are happening, but apart from, you know, new technologies, it doesn't seem to me that there's a lot of movements going on really that change the way how art has an impact on society, in contrast to what has happened before. Everything from, let's say, the futurists to the relational aesthetic movements and everything like this. So if you compare that to the world of food, there is still a lot to be done. It seems suddenly you have like a whole world where there's, like, you know, very like a very real experience available that has not been explored. So for me as an artist, it's interesting to, sorry, I have a cold, to come from this perspective and think about what has happened in the food world. Well, there have been movements in the last 20 years that are very, you know, productive into molecular cuisine and nose-to-tail eating and all these kind of things. But it seems like there's so much to do, which is very real, as you know, like something that makes you feel. And that's, of course, from an artistic perspective, very interesting.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Do you wanna, some of you add something? I knew you want. I knew it. Yeah.
I liked what John said about whether, you know, he didn't really fully explain it, but you questioned whether is the force that creates new things, or whether it's actually, you said, I think, reveals forms of imagination we already had. And and that was a very good expression, I felt. I just wanted to say that. But it reminds me, I come directly from a very large Marcel Duchamp show in Frankfurt, and a big seminar. I'm still teaching at the school where Simon once was a student. And there were students who said, no one has done anything really important since Duchamp. Which of course is a totally, you know, ridiculous thing. But, you know, that, the seminar was about a well-known text. Now I become a little bit theoretical here, but the text that somehow is always mentioned in every philosophical seminar about technology is very old, and it's Walter Benjamin's text about you know, art in the age of reproduction. And in that text, he actually says exactly what you said, I noticed. That, that he was, or at least, but he didn't say it quite as well as you did. But because he just said that artists try to do things that they can't do, because they don't have access to the means yet. So it's a kind of idea of art being prophetic, but not in some stupid romantic sense that you can see the future, but that you're trying to do things that technology has not quite made possible yet. And I'm quite interested in that, you know, that one can see artists who anticipate, and that was again something people said about the Duchamp. I mean, the glass is there, the most legendary of works is in Frankfurt, and that is also, it's already hinting towards virtual space, and it's all these geometries that you can't really see, but they're in there somehow. And it's an interesting thing for this conversation, I feel, that it's the artist's imagination that push things rather than technology, but technology makes it visible or something. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I liked your what you said.
Because of the streaming.
Text. I'm thinking, all I can think of is the Metaverse. Well, the idea is inspired by the Frankfurt School, and Krakauer has a great, who's the teacher of Adorno, who's the first film theorist, basically. And he uses the example of photography and how that actually revealed the transformation to, because they were also Marxist, a bourgeois consciousness versus like an older one, which, you know, saw painting as the valid form of representing the real, which is very different than photography because that's mediated through a mechanical device. Yet we can use a photograph in the court of law to prove whether something happened or not. Well, you can't really use a painting. So but a painting, you know, is mediated through an individual. So there's a different type of real that is being communicated there that the photograph has. But that's just an example of how like a technology, you know, the age of the photograph and cinema revealed a complete transformation of what we see as real versus the painting, which has, you know, the same way that magic no longer, the same way that, you know, a sword used to actually have a spirit and had a name. You know, we don't have, objects don't have that same magic that they would have had in the medieval era. So what does it say about, you know, what does the internet say about, and virtual reality say about how we perceive reality? And I think it's, I mean, the fragmentation of the world was already being described by all the modernists, right? But now we've reached a point where in a day, you know, in the beginning of the modern city, when Paris became this incredible place, you can experience so many things in one day that weren't connected. You know, you can fall in love. There was a war going on in the front. There was like, you were studying philosophy versus in the past where your whole day was organized around the church or something like that. Now we've reached the point where in a given day, the amount of images we process is inconceivable. Like, you know, our experience of reality is not even, it's so far removed what a person, a peasant was experienced in their entire lives, you know, in like the medieval era. So I mean, that's kind of, we have more access to information than ever before. We experience more data than ever before, but at the same time, it has less and less meaning. It feels, I think Baudrillard said that one.
Yeah, and I think it's true, this issue of so much data, that we can't remember it. I mean, I think it happens to everyone, especially in the art world, where you can't go somewhere which is relevant. Like you're not at the biennial and you're looking at everyone you know who has Instagram and is posting. And the truth is, at the end, you don't remember anything. You've seen images of something, but it's like our brains are still in this transformation where there is something emotional linked to memory, which screen images don't really work. And in the same way, you meet people on Zoom, you see them physically, you don't recognize them, as if your physiognomic capacity doesn't work yet through a screen. But maybe it's because we are a generation that started without. We don't know if kids who start processing memory through screens will develop it differently.
You said something at one point about if it's not online, it doesn't exist. And I think it's even more than that, because the internet is so fast and the culture is so hyper accelerated that now maybe that's why like podcasts and streams, the most popular, they just did a survey of like what kids want to be when they grow up, and it used to be like doctor, famous actor, astronaut. Now the number one by far is streamer, the YouTube streamer or like Twitch streamer. And then if that's the most relevant culture, that like, you know, has the most energy, that it means that in order to stay relevant, it's no longer you make this great genius work of art that you spend a lifetime or like years to make. It's that you have to just keep posting nonstop, and that the only way to be part of culture now is to literally like not be able to even breathe. And if you can't analyze things and like let them sit, then that's like that's dark. But like but yet at the same time, that's the reality. So if you're not constantly part of the stream, you're not important.
Very, very interesting. I mean, keep talking, but I think that
that's enough.
At least, you know, try. I don't know if you have time for a question. No, we have time for questions. If any of you, I knew that the Henri had some questions, so you're very welcome. You don't have any questions? You need a mic.
My question will be kind of out of question because I just suddenly think about this the concept of Darwinism. Are we in a time of embracing certain kind of scientific or technological Darwinism? Can
I start off with that?
I think
the most. Finish.
It's scary but exciting. Whatever.
I think we are, but not in like Darwin's idea, but in the internet idea. So the internet's main economy is the attention economy, right? That's the economy of the internet, and the most important place in culture. And I don't think any of you can ever prove me wrong on this one. Is a place called 4chan. Simon mentioned it, and the 4chan is an image board where it kind of was a space where it's the beginning of anonymous culture, and it has no archive. And the only way it's where memes, it's basically where the language of the internet came from, the language we all speak now. It is the most important place, I think, in culture in the past 15 years, at least. Around 15 years. The way it works is that if a post on 4chan doesn't strike a nerve, it'll just disappear into the ether. So it is a true example of like Darwinism on the internet, and the posts that people keep commenting on and like keep alive are the ones that then become these memes that like spread across the internet. It's no longer necessarily only in 4chan now. That's like was the hub in the late 2000s, but that concept of the meme is very much like a Darwinistic reality. And clickbait is another example of that.
There is another question.
Yeah. Hi. I was like starting from something that Ilaria said about the fact that apparently there is a non-intersection between the metaverse and people that are fond of art. Like there are two parallel words. Actually, I'm working on a text that starts from a completely different angle, which is a change of paradigm. For the first time, actually, going into the metaverse means living in an artwork, because anything in the metaverse is created and therefore didn't exist before. So actually, we have to change also our perception of a difference between what is our, let's say, common life in the real world and art, which is separated, and to abolish mentally that distinction when we are in a meta world or in a metaverse, because at that point everything is art, and so we do not have to discriminate about art and non-art, but about kind of art, which is a completely different challenge. So metaverse is a place which is per se an artwork, and we entering the metaverse, we became artwork ourselves, which is a completely different paradigm.
Okay, it's very interesting. So if one of you want to comment, and then we have to stop because I see someone there, it telling me that we have to close. But if you want to say something, maybe Daniel, you want to say something, or Ilaria?
No, I'll say something reassuring, that I think there are people who are inhabiting both worlds. And what you said, and we have them right here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And last word to the boss, to Bartolomeo.
Grazie mille, grazie per I vostri interventi. Thank you for your interventions. That was really interesting, and it's absolutely on the line what we are thinking and experimenting here in a critical way, of course. And
And this is when you're living in something that is changing every day and making history every day, it's a real challenge. And doing this through the works of the artist, through the perspective of the artist, is the vantage point that we have, and we have to really put on the first line. Quindi grazie per averci seguito anche da casa. Vi invito ovviamente a venire a vedere fisicamente la mostra What a Wonderful World, che appunto racconta di tante altre esperienze oltre a quelle che ci abbiamo raccontato questa sera, e sono tutta una serie di mondi che gli artisti ci fanno entrare, in cui gli artisti ci fanno entrare e ci fanno ragionare, ci mettono in discussione i nostri valori, le nostre certezze, le nostre anche punti di vista, che è sempre la cosa più importante che l'arte ci permette di fare. Grazie e grazie a tutti voi.